I'm Philippe Gugler, professor at the University of Fribourg in Switzerland, and I wrote a chapter 5 in the book Rethinking Investment Incentives, published at Columbia University Press. My chapter is dedicated to EU incentive. Both the EU and its individual member states deploy many strategies to strengthen the attractiveness of their business environment, and fostering investment and innovation is seen as a necessary step to increase competitiveness. Competition for investment occurs at the global level and between member states within the EU. State incentives are among the numerous measures adopted by a country to increase its attractiveness to investors. State aid is governed by a strong regulatory framework within the EU that is aimed at limiting destructive competition for investment. My chapter comprises 7 sections. The first section presents a brief overview of the EU regulatory framework on state aid. The second one describes the evolution of the EU policy on state aid. The third identified the main types of state aid granted within the EU. The fourth and fifth sections are dedicated to the 2 main types of state aid that are of particular importance within the scope of this book: aid for regional development and aid for research and development. The 6th section focuses on the EU policy regarding tax incentives, and my final section discusses the effectiveness of state aid regulation within the EU. The incentive policy of EU member states are governed by the EU's law and policy on state aid. The core provisions of state aid are contained in Article 107, 108, 109 of the Treaty of the EU. Article 107 prohibits any aid granted by a member state or through state resources. However, Article 107 allows exceptions, such as for measures responding to social concern or to exceptional events, for example, natural disaster. Since the end of the 1990s, state aid procedures have been simplified. One of the major steps was achieved in 1998 with the adoption of the General Block Exemption Regulation, for example, regarding measures in favor of small and medium-sized enterprises, research and development, environment, protection, employment and training. In my chapter, I analyze the evolution of the EU policy on state aid. Since 2005, the EU adopted the State Aid Action Plan, which reflects a new economic approach called the Strengthening Economic Approach regarding state aid policy. The EU applies the so-called balancing test. The test is considered the expected results of the aid in terms of positive effects on the aid's targets and negative effects on competition. More recently, the modernization of the EU state aid regulation has been adopted in view of the Europe 2020 strategy. Within this framework, it is recognized that state aid policy can also actively and positively contribute to the Europe 2020 objectives, in particular as far as innovation is concerned. In my chapter, I identified and explained the main feature of the several types of state aids registered in the EU, for example, the non-crisis related state aid and the crisis-related state aid. Then I focused on the 2 main types of state aid that are of particular importance: aid of regional development and aid for research and development and innovation. I addressed the state aid in form of tax incentives too. Tax incentives are one of the main instruments adopted by countries to attract new investment, particularly foreign investment. The case of tax incentives is particularly tricky. There is no one-size-fits-all policy on this matter. The European Commission adopts a case-by-case approach to decide if a tax incentive may be permitted or not. The European Commission is of the view that there is no room to contemplate a tax harmonization within the EU. This approach creates a marge de maneuver for EU member states. In my chapter, I analyze also the effectiveness of EU policy regarding incentives in an important issue. Although the EU does have a specific regulatory framework designed to prevent certain types of state aid, the exemption regime may apply to a wide range of new investments. And I conclude with the following observation. This exemption umbrella provides the framework for member states to grant incentives. The EC policy on state aid has shifted toward a greater flexibility and openness for state aid whose positive effects on competitiveness, productivity, growth, and innovation may compensate for distortions of competition. Of course, member state incentives must comply with WTO rules on subsidies. However, in this chapter, I demonstrated that the EU and WTO frameworks are quite different. State aid that is allowed within the EU may be challenged according to WTO agreements, particularly when measures that do not affect trade within the EU may affect trade of third countries. Overall, although conclusions regarding the effectiveness of the EU state aid regime are difficult to draw, prospects for more illuminated analysis will improve if the EC will increase transparency and evaluation of state aid practices and policy in the future.